putting the term social determinants of health into our common vernacular within community, of having conversations at from the grassroots level up into the boardroom, C-suite levels about health equity. And one of the things that we really are most proud of is the fact that entering into our eighth year of Igniting Hope, our conferences of bringing people together to really start talking about how we can change things. And out of the original first few Igniting Hope conference, we have been able to birth three very important organizations. One being the Buffalo Center for Health Equity, which I have the privilege of being uh, the CEO of, and which is a community-based organization that our mission is to eliminate race-based health disparities. Two, the Erie County Department of Health Equity, which has been put in place by county law. And that's led by Kelly Wolford, and they have a great team over there. And then also, the University of Buffalo has established a UB Community Research Institute, which Dr. Murphy, I see him on here, and our new friend, Dr. Gardner. We're so happy to see you, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And so we have Buffalo is unique, because it has three entities operating: one at the community-based level, two at the university level, three at the governmental level, all really focused around uh, bringing health equity to this region. We have learned over the last decade that there are five key things that we need to focus on if we're going to bring health equity in this region. And these things, are familiar out of the social determinants of health. One is around literacy, bringing every child up to reading level. We have a crisis in this nation, where in this country, United States of America, only 17% of Black children are at reading level, right? 17%. And Buffalo is in that range. We're about 20. Uh, and so bringing people up to reading level gets them in the position where they could uh, excel academically, so they can move to the second factor, which is employment and uh, maximizing employment status, being uh, from unemployment to employed. If you're employed, getting to a higher level of employment so you can increase your income. Three would be housing. We've done a lot of work with Dr. Taylor. There's so many factors that relates to under the poor quality of housing that so many people are living in their communities, that contribute to their health outcomes. For access to primary care, we all know that having a good primary care physician will have a positive impact upon health outcomes. And then five, of access to healthy food, and they're all interrelated, right? Some of the reasons why children struggle with their schooling is because of things going on in their homes. Their parents may be struggling because they didn't get the education, so it's difficult for them to get the jobs, to move to better housing. You could put the healthy food in front of people, put it in a place, but if they don't have the income to purchase it, so we all know how those things interact. So we want to focus on those five things leading up to Igniting Hope, September 19th. So we're having these virtual conversations leading up to, because we really want to hear from people who are operating in these fields around these five areas. Help us to better understand, what's the reality out there. It's easy to say that, oh, we need to just change something, but how to actually do it is really the key. And who are the partners that we need to bring to this thing? One of the things we've been able to do is we've been able to reach into corporate America, educational, governmental. But I think we have the ear of a lot of folks who will be really interested in coming and hearing what we're saying about how we can fix these things. And then three really understanding the movement it's going to take in order to bring real change, right? Um, I'm not going to lie to you. I wish I could say, hey, if we could just get X amount of dollars to do X thing, would everybody things would work? But that's not how things are. We need to have a strategic plan that that allows for people to operate in their areas of expertise and gifts, and understand that all of it leads to producing better health outcomes. So this is our journey that we've embarking on between now and September 19th and 20th. It's our hope that through these sessions we'll get great information around the topics that we're talking about tonight, and then put together from the other two sessions. And then on the days of igniting hope, we'll really be able to even dig deeper on how to integrate and assemble kind of a strategic plan for us as a community to embrace on how we're going to achieve health equity in this region, and what role each one of our institutions or organizations or coalitions are going to play. I believe it's a path towards victory. It's going to be difficult, but I believe that it's something that we can do. We've engaged Clementine, a consulting firm, who, again, from our community, who know the community, but they know the professional stuff about it, how to get these things done. So I'm talking about really having a real plan, a real blueprint for us to move forward. Our role at Buffalo Center for Health Equity is conveners. We'll be the ones that, and we'll take the responsibility. We'll take accountability for this, right? So if you will work with us, we'll be the accountable partner to put these pieces together and give us something that we could all work from together. Because I think we have to have somebody has to be accountable, right? And so I'll take that. We'll take that sense of accountability. If you will give us your input, if you commit to working with us, we'll be the accountable partner to say we'll produce something with your help to make some things work. So that's all I really want to say tonight. I know that the folks from Clementine have a process that they want to take us through that we're going to go into in some small group sessions. So please, I believe that people in the community have the answers. You guys know how to fix this stuff. You know how to get this done. And so we just need to all figure out a way to how we can put this all together in something that will lead to victory for us. So any questions on that? All right. So I'm going to punt it back to who, Sam?
Kim, if you wanted to share anything else before we get started, just as a reminder to everyone who joined, maybe after I put this in the chat, we are recording today's session. We do have a summary that we will be sharing, as well as the recording of today's meeting. Any questions, message me or Shay in the chat. But I'm going to pass it back to Kim.
So this is Akua. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm not on camera. A little under the weather tonight. But I wanted to go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves. We have Will Green, Asantua Holly, and Stephanie Pete. So if you could just introduce yourselves, and then we'll just jump right in.
Sure. So Will Green, currently serve as Assistant Dean for Community Relations in UB Graduate School of Education. I also am the owner and operator of Tremonti Solutions Educational Consulting Company. And I've been in education almost 30 years. Oh, I am not a researcher, I'll say that, but my life has pretty much been lived under the system of education in Buffalo, New York, attending predominantly white institutions. And I think really probably the most impactful experience is going to, I think, the first community school in Buffalo, New York, Community School 53, where I had Black teachers, a Black principal. I didn't know anything else but Black leadership until I went to Hutch Tech, where it was quite a culture shock.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Do Asantua next?
Mm-hmm. Good afternoon, everybody, or I guess I could say evening. Asantua Holly, Vice President of Operations at Northland Workforce Training Center. I've been at Northland for just a little over 3 years, no, almost 4 years in September. My background is actually in finance. I worked in the financial industry for about 20 years prior to coming into workforce development, and also adjunct at UBEOC for about 6 years in the spectrum of adult education learners.
Awesome. Thanks. And Stephanie?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Pete, Senior Director of Workforce Development at Say Yes Buffalo. I have been there for almost 11 years. I also co-own Second Chapter Bookstore here in the city of Buffalo. Buffalo born and raised. I went to Buffalo Public Schools my entire educational journey up until college. So I'm very passionate about this space and happy to be here with you all today.
Awesome. Thank you. And so what we're going to do today, we have some questions that we want to go through with our panelists, and we're going to get some information from them, but then also open up to the audience as well to contribute. And our plans are to take all this information, provide it in a mini learning session for the conference itself. And then during the conference, we'll be going through a strategic visioning process where we then develop a larger strategic plan. So we're going to set the landscape right now. And the first question that we have for the panelists is, how would you describe the current state of educational and workforce opportunities for Black and Brown communities in Buffalo? And then we'll start that, we'll go backwards. So Stephanie, if you want to start that one.
Sure. So currently, I would say there's tons of resources being poured into the community for upskilling and education. I'm sure you all have seen, the free degree programs at SUNY area for residents between the ages of 25 and I think 55, all of the healthcare money that's come in for people to get free degree programs. But it was already mentioned today, there's not enough money being poured into the wraparound supports, safe and stable housing, transportation, childcare, mental health support. All of those are desperately needed. And in our work, we see it all the time. It's great to have free education or free upskilling, but if you are not living in safe housing, how are you actually able to, get through those programs and achieve? So there really needs to be a holistic approach and funding for workforce programs to actually support people through these opportunities. We have lots of programs, but we don't have enough community capacity, I think, to make a dent in our neediest populations. I just look at my program, which is an Earn and Learn program that is free for students. So they get a college degree or certificate. They're working and they go towards a full-time job. And we had 10 young people in our newest cohort. So there's all these amazing programs happening throughout the community, but we can't serve as many young people or many people who are underemployed as we need to. And I don't know if folks realize this, but the latest labor market assessment that was done through Invest Buffalo Niagara, Tech Buffalo, and some other organizations revealed that Buffalo Niagara has the lowest workforce participation rate for African Americans in the country when you compare us to regions of similar size. And that sits at 57% right now, and we should all be ashamed of that. But it's structural, right? We know that. So there's certainly a capacity issue. And then lastly, I would say there is a lack of understanding of the in-demand industries here that offer mid-range, mid-skill wages that have really solid career pathways. And I don't think I'm not faulting people or the community. There needs to be a digestible marketing plan to communicate our labor market data so folks can actually make informed choices when they're making plans for going to school or pursuing careers.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Stephanie. Asantua, the same question. How would you describe the current state of educational and workforce opportunities for Black and Brown communities in Buffalo?
I'm pretty much going to say everything that Stephanie said, I'm going to echo, but really just lean in more into that last part because I'm a stickler about that. And that is like truly understanding like we have these programs that are available, but if you don't have the wraparound and services, and even more so if you're not understanding that there's actual a job attached to it. And so within the spectrum of like, yes, he's got these great training, but I believe as providers, there's a 100% accountability piece to place people in jobs afterwards, right? So it's no good to have people have 20, 40 different certificates that they've passed that they can't get a job that has sustainable wages, that does not offer a career pathway with it, we're doing an injustice of telling people to go through these programs and there's not that path afterwards. Also, even with like the education, with the higher education, I'm big on employers also really looking and evaluating the type of jobs and career pathways that they have. And within that, I mean, there's this paper ceiling, right? So if you do not have this degree, you can't apply for this particular position. And so in the Buffalo landscape, when you're looking at jobs, especially like IT or different things like that, there's a lot of entry level jobs that you can have that really, when you look at them, don't require you to have a degree. And I'm not against higher education. I'm just very vocal on really understanding what career pathways do need that degree, how you can start and it still make sustainable wages when doing it and still have a career pathway that moves within it. And then again, just echoing what Stephanie said, it's not sustainable if you don't have the resources to do it. You can't ask somebody to go to training and they're not getting paid while doing it, right? You can't ask somebody to work their 12-hour shift and then come to this training afterwards and they're trying to figure out how I'm going to do rent, how I'm going to eat, how I'm going to take care of kids, how I'm going to do all these different things. It's almost an impossible task. And then you have this circle, right? So now I started this program, I stopped this program, I started this program, I stopped this program. And especially if you're looking at some of the colleges, within doing that, now you have all this debt on top of that because you took out loans, or and then it's the loans would help supplement the other things that you wanted to pay for, and now you can't get into another different program, and so it's this cycle ongoing that's taking place. So a lot of opportunities, but I still don't think we're at a point where we're placing the right opportunities in front of people to make the right and informed decisions about them.
That's great. Thank you, Asantua. Will, the same question will have you answer as well.
Yeah, I certainly agree with everything that Stephanie and Asantua have mentioned. And actually, the last statement that Asantua made is like opportunities. It's not just opportunities, it's quality opportunities, like opportunities where there's a real chance to achieve and gain something. The question, if we just take it as for what it is and look at it topically, there's no schools in receivership in the city of Buffalo right now. But what does that mean? Does that mean that those schools are quality? Does that mean that the students who go through the prescribed curriculum in those schools come out ready for post-secondary opportunities or even entering the workforce? I mean, these are really questions that we need to think about, because if it is not an opportunity that, and I think I wrote this down, like is a supporting and affirming environment, then what are we really doing for the students who go through there, even if they graduate, even if they achieve? I'm looking at it from the respect of K through 12 schools. So we have a number of high performing schools, but do those opportunities exist for every student who goes through those doors? And what does it mean to go through all those years of education and come out with a degree? How prepared are you for the world that exists? How prepared are you to go into higher education? There's statistics to show that many students who graduate, regardless of their GPA level, are not prepared for higher education or are not prepared to enter a workforce that requires a certain amount of skills. So on one hand, there are plenty of opportunities that exist. But on another hand, if we look at it through a microscopic lens, the quality of those opportunities certainly don't seem to meet the level of need that persists in Buffalo, New York.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that as well, Will. I just wanted to make note that Sam has dropped in the primer. So we have a primer for each session in terms of the pre-sessions. And then we'll also send out a summary of today's conversation as well as the future ones. And so just pointing that out there, there's a primer with a lot of information, one pager that Sam has dropped in the chat. And so this next question, I'm going to ask the panelists again, but I'd like for folks who are attending also to go ahead and drop your answers to this question in the chat. And that question is, what are the key factors currently driving inequities in education, literacy, and employment outcomes in the city? And Asantua, I'll start with you, and then we'll go through the panelists. But like I said, go ahead and drop this in the chat if you have something to share.
Where do you start with that question? That's so loaded. Everything, segregation, race. I mean, racism. Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna put it out there. The segregation is driving it. 100%. Lack of knowledge is driving it. Lack of communication, lack of community coming together, lack of support, lack of partnership, lack of transparency. Yeah, all of those.
It's definitely, it's a lot to summarize for sure. Stephanie, what are the key factors currently driving inequities?
Definitely, you want me to jump in on it?
I'll go after you. Yeah.
Okay. So to Asanta, I kind of was giggling as Asanta so eloquently stated. It's kind of like everything. It's a perfect storm of just negative conditions. But I'll put it to you like this: like, so looking at the first question, right? We say opportunities for Black and Brown communities in Buffalo. The first thing that comes to my mind is who are the Black and Brown communities? Like, we're not even specific to say Black African Americans historically born and raised on the east side of Buffalo. We're not even specifically saying Latino Puerto Ricans from Puerto Rico who migrated to or who moved from Puerto Rico to Buffalo. We're just grouping these folks in these large pools without specifically recognizing the individual issues and needs that they bring, so we can prescribe individual things to address these needs. That's a part of the issue. A part of the issue is that we are trying to lump all of these solutions into one box for everybody to dig in and grab a piece. I don't think that's how you get sustainable change. I certainly know that is not how you attack racism and white supremacy. You have to attack it at the root. You cannot follow the same ideologies that created the conditions to think that you will use them then to solve the conditions. So we need to break down, disseminate, and look at all these microscopic issues that impact communities differently, have conversation with individuals in those communities, and beg, borrow, steal, do what we got to do to get them at the table so we can hear their concerns, regain trust, and come up with a strategy to develop something to approach even one of these issues.
I'm in agreement with both of my colleagues here. I'm going to speak more toward employment in my response. So one of the things that I think is a key factor in this city, and it's not just in the city, but policy plays a huge role in employment. And I always talk about the benefits cliff. We have so many people who cannot afford, even if a program offers a job that pays $3 to $4 more an hour, which could potentially put you in a better situation long term, right? Where you're able to grow within an organization and grow as a professional. Can people truly afford to lose whatever benefits they have in order to get a job they might be able to keep, especially if you have not had a stable work history in the past? And the fact that we don't have income disregard for paid training is doing a disservice to so many people, because I'd rather stay, if I have not had stability in my professional life, I'd rather stay with these services and these benefits that I know are going to be here, right? Like, people are thinking about survival and taking care of themselves and their families, and that's just real. Another thing about Buffalo with the racism and segregation is this is a who you know town. So a lack of social and professional networks is really keeping a lot of people who even have the credentials out that they can't even access the careers and the organizations that could truly provide a middle-class lifestyle for them and their families, just because of the racism. Our segregation, most people know about the segregation and isolation index. What is it, like 84% of Black people in the city live east of Main Street. The isolation index for white people in our community is over 90%. The private sector workforce, the last study I saw, is 91%. So these are very real problems that we're seeing in our community. And lastly, I talked about the labor market assessment in my my comments before, but it's a couple hundred pages long, but it really is worth looking at. They actually documented that a lot of leaders and employers in this community have negative attitudes toward the Buffalo public school system. So if I already don't look at the school system as quality preparation for my future workforce, all of my decisions will be made from that. And those are real things that we really need to challenge in this community and talk about how we're going to, like Will said, come up with solutions that actually align with certain individual populations in our community.
And Stephanie, I think that's a great segue to talk a little bit more about education and literacy specifically, and how that builds foundations for career readiness. And so, to your point, you mentioned the benefits cliff and this fear of being, losing your benefits depending on your elevation career wise. But then I think that's a really great point that you bring up as it relates to employees or employers and what their messages might look like, to who they're hiring and who they're interested in hiring as well. So when we think about access to early childhood education, and I know your programs span early on into later before folks get into careers, what does that look like in terms of how they're shaping long-term academic success and career readiness in Buffalo?
Am I kicking this off? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So I can only speak specifically towards the work that we're doing. What we're seeing with literacy and how it impacts work, we already know that, nationally we're seeing, most folks are at a 5th, 6th grade level, and Buffalo is no different. When we're talking about literacy and how it translates to career readiness and post-secondary success, we're seeing so many young people who struggle with completing job applications or written communication, reading at work and understanding things and being able to advocate for themselves. It really is tough. Even with employers, we try to coach them through writing job descriptions that are much more plain speak and getting rid of technical jargon so that folks can actually understand what they're applying to and understand what's being asked of them in a job. I don't really have a clear answer for it. It's just really tough right now. Right, for us, we're kind of being the communicator between employers and young people. Like, this is what you need to be doing, and then also prepping young people. This is how you have to, you have to be able to actually write and read in the workplace. When you think about young people, even how they communicate, they don't write papers the way we used to. Everything's text and shorthand and acronyms, and it's really tough. It's really tough for young people to present themselves in a way that employers are able to see their talent and their potential.
Thanks for sharing that, Asantewa or Will. Anything to add to that?
I mean, I definitely agree. I guess I don't want to shift it, but I also just want to, I guess, kind of say to that point within the early childhood, it's still the exposure. So it's that literacy piece, but it's also that exposure and engagement and being able to see, interact, and do different things. So I always talk about, I went to Futures Academy, 37 in the Fruit Belt, growing up, and then City Honors. But it's futures. I remember like going to school, and there was this place called the Town, and pretty much it was like 4 classrooms put together, and you go to the town. And I was able to, one week I would be a nurse, the next week a doctor. I work in the superstore. It was like literally set up like a town. And you go up and you dress up and do all these different things. And there was a bank in there, and you go to the bank and you have your little passbook at the time, right? And then if you did good and you got an A, you got a stamp in there, and you could use that money at the school store. But it was engagement and exposure that took place. It'd be like, hey, like, oh, these are these types of jobs. And we're doing that at kindergarten, 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade. And I don't see that in schools anymore, where children and kids are exposed to that. And so you have this non-exposure, you're kept in the same geographic areas, right? Because a lot of the times, and Stephanie was going over some of this, you're not moving out of the space that you're in, whether it's the east side or west side of Buffalo. So you don't know anything outside of that. And then you go to high school, and not speaking badly of Buffalo Public Schools, but in a lot of cases you're passed through with that. And then you get into these opportunities where you're looking for training or employing or college, and you're like, oh, wait, you can't speak the language that we need you to speak. You can't write what we need you to write and stuff, right? And so when Stephanie's talking about is that being able to navigate with the employers, because hey, you need people to come here and work for you. And so that means you need to be able to change your language as well. And then also to those students or those who are trying to go into that field to be able to speak it also. I think a lot of ownership also comes on that, into meeting people where they're at. And so I'm an advocate of like, why are we doing certain 4-year degrees for particular jobs that aren't necessary, right? And so, like, even in our 2-year programs here, they're AOS degrees that we offer at the training center. What that means is the math you're learning is math for welding if you're in a welding program, right? The reading you're learning is reading for blueprints. It's not trying to boggle you down with loads of information the way it used to be, to just say, hey, you learned it all and you went through 12 credit hours. That doesn't work anymore. Like, here's the information that you need to be able to do to read and effectively do your job. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't require literacy to do that. It at 100% requires literacy to do it. I'm just saying that there needs to be more ownership on really teaching and meeting people where they're at and giving them the tool set to be able to go ahead and advance that, especially when you're looking at career development, workplace development, and so forth.
Yeah, I think, and I've noticed someone is in the comments, so I hope we can get to that. And I'll be really brief, but certainly I agree with Stephanie and Asantua. But I think we have to also be honest with ourselves. When we talk about geography, race, and income, those are all things that we use to judge people. One of the first things we ask, where are you from? You know, oh, you sound like this. What is your job? What do you do? These are things that we use to assess what social standing people have, where they're from. Now, of course, there are people from the east side of Buffalo who are Black, who have acquired the skills necessary to do well in any industry. But I can tell you for a fact that there's a certain level of intimidation when you go into spaces and you know that people are wary of your ability. Are you a DEI hire, right? I consider myself to be highly professional, highly skilled, but I often question some of the things I do and have to write and rewrite responses to make sure that no one can question my skill or ability. So imagine someone who does not have that training, hasn't had access to those things. How can they be properly judged in that space? How can they be looked at as someone who can grow into a role the way I've seen so many other people get the opportunity to do? Um, I think sometimes it's more about the perception of what's happening in those spaces, how we use those things to judge people versus the reality of their performance if they did not have to worry about fitting in.
I think that that's a great segue to Tracy's comment in the chat. Tracy said that low literacy rates among youth and adults create huge inequities. Research indicates that health equity and health literacy is intertwined. And so low literacy is a fixable issue, but there is an appalling lack of funding, especially for adult literacy and education. And when parents have low literacy, their kids usually do too. And so I think in the primer, we've talked about that, right, in terms of what literacy looks like and what that could be passed down from a generation standpoint as well. And so the transition of healthcare over the past 10 years into electronic and telehealth causes a digital divide. Many people don't have access to healthcare because it's so dependent on technology. Community training is an answer, but there's not enough awareness. And so one of the questions that we had that actually aligns with Tracy's comments is around how we can better align, Buffalo's K through 12 education, vocational training, and job readiness programs to support long-term success. And so I'm wondering if any of the panels have any thoughts on that. Stephanie, I know that y'all work directly with schools and then also navigate with the employers as well. So wondering if you want to start and then we'll pass it around.
Yeah, one things that we are working on internally and that we've seen really great results in other communities is when employers actually get invested in the K-12 system. So one thing that we are looking at is how we can develop community partnerships. And when I say partnership, I don't mean adopting. I don't mean just doing the cutesy, events and donating book bags, but actually partnering with schools and providing early career exposure and mentoring starting very early in their academic journey. So that by the time they're going into high school, they're making more informed decisions. Yes, I want to go into tech because I have been exposed to tech at M&T for 5 years, and I've gone through these programs and I've met these professionals, and I have a really good understanding of what that is. So now I can make more informed decisions, and I have a network. I know people that I can reach out to help me in that journey. I think when you look at employment in the United States in general, it's very much employers sit at the end of the assembly line and they're like, give me my talent, give me my workers. Whereas other countries where work-based learning is is literally built into the public education system. For minor youth apprenticeship, we look at Sweden quite often as like the gold standard. Every kid goes into an apprenticeship there. There's work-based learning like built into their public education system. So employers really have a lot of responsibility in helping to mold and teach young people so that they're walking out of high school and being able to go into a career with experience and paid exposure and having a better understanding of what awaits them when they graduate. So I would love for our community, for employers to actually look at how do I get ingrained into the K-12 system in a way that is meaningful on both sides, right? Because that's the easiest way for you to develop a talent pipeline. When you're a good employer and folks know who you are and they're aware of what you offer and they're comfortable, applying, they're naturally going to be able to refer friends and families. And then you have a thriving talent pipeline to ensure the success of your company. So that's what I would like to see happen locally.
And I think just to piggyback, if I can, on what Stephanie said, I definitely agree from the workforce perspective on that from the employer, but also within the school systems themselves, the guidance counselors, the teachers, that engagement of not that one track, right? So, and we're doing a better job of it, but I think there can be still more done. And I just come from a perspective of definitely advanced manufacturing, clean energy. That's what we do here, right? But if you don't know what those jobs are or how much money can be made from doing that type of work and not the long commitment for schooling to go ahead and do it, and you have, a guidance counselor that's saying something like, well, you got a 4.0 GPA, so this type of work isn't for you. Well, why isn't this type of work for you, right? I think we really have to do overall better in that system of that exposure and that engagement. And this can be you doing this type of work. And what is this type of work? I know we have our Summer Youth Academy program, and the reason that was started here was because when we first started doing it, and offering a summer program that was just through Northland, the suburban schools would bus students here to go to that program. And the reason was they knew the opportunities in welding, electrical, mechatronics, and the programs that were being offered. And so we had to make sure that those who were in the city of Buffalo and the community also knew, like, no, these opportunities are for you also, but you have to be able to know what they are, know what the background is, know that you can go ahead and do it. And so if you're told that entire time, K through 12, yo, you fit this one little square and this is what you should be, then that's what a person thinks. I can only be this, right? Or I can only be a CNA. Well, what's that pipeline from CNA to LPN to RN and stuff like I'm furious about the healthcare. I'm sorry about that because these training programs that only promote CNA as if that's the only position that can be done. And so you see more Black and brown people in that back-breaking career field without offering, okay, our program teaches this, and now you can get an LPN, and now you can get an RN. But what I'm basically trying to say is just that exposure 100% to that career pathway so people can see themselves doing it and bring people in who are doing that work. I mean, the best testimonial is firsthand testimonial. And so For us, we're bringing in kids who look like, or students, those students into the schools that they are going to, where, hey, yeah, this 21-year-old here, African-American male, graduated from Northland's electrical program, and he's making 6 figures, and he just bought 2 houses. This is you, and this is your possibility, and this is your opportunity to be able to go ahead and do that. So I think exposure and engagement is key, K through 12.
Yeah, I gotta echo that sentiment. And I guess I'll give you an anecdotal response. Just looking at my life, I can't think of the vocational opportunities that existed, that I know my uncles and the older men in my neighborhood got these experiences working with their hands and building things. And these are really vital skills. What I think about is, well, here we are in Buffalo, New York, with one of the oldest housing systems in the country. How did we miss the bus between we can prepare these students and give them the skills to repair the housing system in the city we live in? Now, I know we can't go back and, go back in time and make that decision, but we certainly can look at these decisions that were made, because those are decisions made by someone somewhere to change curriculum, right? And to push students in a certain direction. But so we can't make those same mistakes. The opportunities that exist for employment locally should be the opportunities that exist for curriculum building and skill building in our K through 12 system. Now, if folks don't have enough access to the ground level, I'll go back to talk to people in the communities. Right now, housing system is decaying. And if you don't have the skills necessary to make those type of repairs yourself, along with a few friends, your house is going to crumble because it's too expensive. We cannot continue to make the same mistakes that have been made before. We need to identify what immediate opportunities exist for employment and make sure that there are pathways beginning in kindergarten or pre-kindergarten all the way through high school, so folks can take those positions and not just improve their economic condition, but improve the overall condition of the community. It's an ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I think, to that point, when we talk about social determinants of health, we talk about all the interconnected pieces throughout all of it as well. So thank you for making that connection. I see Dr. Murphy said that Will's suggestion regarding training to upgrade housing is part of Dr. Taylor's neighborhood transformation project. Dr. Murphy, do you want to talk a little bit about that before we go into the next question?
Well, sure. Dr. Taylor's Neighborhood Transformation Project, in essence, focuses on these 5 areas that we're talking about here, and with the vision to actually improve the lived environment that folks grow up in and live in and so forth. So it's really, like linking these social determinants, just as Will suggested. I mean, it's a huge opportunity that if we can train kids and adults to with the skills to upgrade the homes, then not only does substandard housing improve, then you build wealth in the community by having the people doing the work coming from the community.
Thanks for sharing that as well. And I think that kind of leads us into a couple questions. We were going to talk a little bit more about the consequences of disconnected education and workforce systems. I think we've gotten a lot of insight around what that might look like. But before we move on, I just want to, Stephanie, I'm looking at you because you see that disconnect and what actually happens. And so do you want to answer that question, and then we can move into the next one? What are the consequences of disconnected education and workforce systems for Buffalo youth transitioning from high school into adulthood?
Broadly, I think we are setting up young people to make decisions and sometimes take on debt, and they don't understand what the career opportunities are for what they just invested in. We see that all the time. I think, and I say it very openly, I think especially for communities of color, for any marginalized community, higher education. And although we know that that is still the greatest pathway to getting out of poverty, we have such an emotional attachment to seeing our kids graduate college. And I will always push college. However, like Asantua has mentioned, it's welders out here making, 6 figures. And it's a stable, not just stable, growing career field in demand. And they don't know. And even for me, I told Stephen Tucker this a while ago. He showed a video of one of their training programs and what like the work actually looked like. I'm like many people, I thought advanced manufacturing was you were in a jumpsuit, all dirty, working with machines, having soot all over you. That's not what it is anymore. But so many people don't understand that. So I think that is a huge issue in our community. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Because I had another point and I lost it.
Nope, it's all good. What are the consequences of disconnected education and workforce systems for Buffalo youth?
Yes. Also, we're having not just young people in general lose faith in these programs because they don't lead to anything. First of all, you have to start with the employers and you have to hold them accountable to actually hiring them afterwards. And workforce programs have to align with what's in demand in our community, and that should be able to support people through them, give them a stipend or paying them hourly while they're in it. But the biggest thing is we see, you go through who wants to go through a program for whether it's 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and there's no job at the end of it. That's absolutely, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
Why are we expecting the most neediest people in our community to do it? It makes zero sense whatsoever. So that's something that really needs to change. It has to be employer driven and they have to be held accountable to what they said they were going to do. So if you said you were going to interview and hire 10 people out of this program, how do we as a community hold them accountable to doing what they said they were going to do?
And Asantua, I want to ask you like a follow-up question related to that, because I know you're working directly with employers as students go through your workforce training programs. So I'm wondering if you have any insight that you want to add to that question.
Stephanie hit it 100% on the nose, and it's one of the things that we preach here. So like for the training center, we don't do anything that's not industry driven or based at all. So when people come to us and ask, oh, there's this training opportunity and you should do it because there's this grant funding available for it. You can get this funding to do it. You can get funding for staffing. We don't look at it in terms of that. And the reason is what Stephanie just said, because so what? Then you put all these people through these programs, you're not paying them through these programs, and there's no job attachment to it. So how did we really move the needle? How did we impact the community? How did we make any economic impact at all when doing that? And I personally would not feel comfortable sleeping at night knowing I'm putting people through training programs and there's no job at the end, or the job that you left is not getting you into any closer or better to a career, after the fact in there. And so I know with us, there's that industry driven, industry focus. It has to have family sustaining wages to it. I don't want to put Northland's numbers on here because it's not about us right now, but our placement rate is over 80% in jobs, in industry and jobs. The coalition, the West New York Coalition of Tech and Advanced Manufacturing that Stephen also leads, Stephanie is a part of it. Well, Say Yes is a part of that coalition, but it's skin in the game for employers. The finishing and deburring program that was just run, the employers had to say, yes, we're committed. This is how many people we're hiring from it. The employers had to pay the stipends for people to go through that program. They had skin in the game. Like if we run this program and you're saying that these amount of people that you need to hire, and they all had to commit to a wage, right? So if you have one employer who was paying people a lot and then another who wasn't paying, you had to meet in the middle on there. Everybody who graduated the program needed to come out and make that same family sustaining wage. And that really is that accountability piece on all levels to it. And it's the employers, but it's these training providers too that need to make sure, like, hey, if you're saying you're doing this, people are not or should not be just a check mark for you to say, oh, well, this is how many people who we had go through the program. I'm not impressed by that. And I hope I'm not hurting anybody's feelings on here who's in workforce development. Impress me by telling me how many people completed your program and were placed after they were in that program. Because when we're talking about all these other social determinants, for me, workforce development is so important. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money for healthcare. You don't have or a job that provides you healthcare. You don't have the money to have housing. You don't have the money to further education. You don't have the money to go ahead and do additional things for your family. And so you have to be able to put people in a position where they can take care of themselves. Like even your mental health counts on that. How do you think and imagine people feel when I can't feed my kids? I can't buy a home. I can't go to the grocery store and do these things. Of course, I'm not going to get off of benefits and fall off that benefit cliff or anything like that. Why would I do that? I'm not going to do that. Oh, to go through this training program because you said I had to go through the program to go ahead and get the benefits, but the training providers still are telling me like, well, we really couldn't place you in the job anyway because there was no job attached to the training that was going to be done in the first place.
And that's very real. I saw Pastor George. Did you want to say something? I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to do a process check. And at first, let me say just thank you so much. I'm sitting here just learning so much. And so this is exactly what we're trying to get done here. And so for our panelists, and I know we're capturing, I don't know our process are cool, but
yeah,
guys, you've listed probably at least 10 to 15 real practical solutions, right? And so we want to make sure that we capture that, and then and Asantawa, is that what I said? And have really laid out who actually needs to do the work too, right? So in our document, when we get to Igniting Hope, I just want to do a process check. We're going to list all these things that we say need to happen and who needs to be accountable to make that work. So this is not, for me, this is not falling on deaf ears, right? It's again, my responsibility, my accountability moment is to take this information and then move it through the folks who can actually impact these things. So I just wanted to just do a check on process, and thank you to the panelists for giving us the kind of information that I know that you shared 105 times before, and I appreciate your endurance and I just wanted to just do that check-in.
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor George. And so we have a couple more questions that we're going to ask, and one honestly is going to summarize, like, what happens if nothing changes, but then also to specifically name solutions. And then the last thing that we want to do is actually check in with the folks who are on this call. Where do you feel like you or your organization can contribute to the future of what this needs to look like and how we progress? And so first question is, if nothing changes, and honestly, I think each panelist can answer this and also think about the solutions, because we'll have that question next. If nothing changes with the current state of our education, our literacy rates, and that connection to our workforce, overall workforce in Buffalo, what then happens? What then happens?
And I can jump in first, and I'll just be very brief and say the same thing that we got going on now, the same status quo. Some people will get in, some people won't, right? Because the city is going to keep moving, whether the minority, Black and Brown community and population are in it and moving with this movement or not. And it's happening right now, right? And so the train has left the station a while ago, right? And so there has to be a decision on what we're actually going to do to be impactful, to actually, I saw in the comments, like, who needs to be at the table. To me, real decision makers, people who can actually pick up the phone and make things move. Like, I sit on coalitions and different things, like with and it's no offense to people who are on there, but if you don't know the person to pick up the phone who can actually do something and do something about it, then like, no, like, bring that. If you're saying, oh, somebody from city, bring that city hall person, bring that, legislator, bring that president or CEO of that employer, that company, that principal, that superintendent. Because the one thing is, everybody can't do it. And I'm just dumping into the solution part of it. I'm a firm believer in do what you do best, right? Do what your organization does best and lean that support to the other organization. You cannot do everything. And I think a lot of times it's like there's so much stuff that's going on and it's so chaotic and there's so much things that are taking place that need to be fixed. They can't be fixed by one organization or one entity at a time, but it's strength in coming together and using the greater parts of all of us to work together. Like, I know it's gonna sound, but when you think of the civil rights movement, a lot of different things were taking place at the same time, right? It wasn't just Martin Luther King doing one thing, it was that, and there were other action organizations doing things, and they were doing it simultaneously. So you didn't have any choice to see a movement taking place. But as long as we stay divided in this way, and we'll say, oh, we're not divided, we are 100% divided. We are divided because people, we don't want to get on the same page. We say we do, but we don't. And it's required in order to go ahead and do it. I don't sit here and say I know stuff about K through. I'm calling and say yes. Like, they doing it. The model works. Why am I trying to do in that space, a space that we're not in, right? I'm calling Steph, Daphne, I'm calling Dave. Hey y'all, what y'all got going on in this particular space, right? And sending people to them. I'm not trying to hold it and be like, well, I don't know, so I'm not going to share this information or that contact to them to, to speak to the expert in that. And I like a lot of time we hold on information. I'll just say briefly, I was at another meeting at Leadership Buffalo, and Elron I did, and was talking about like Buffalo being one big living room. And a lot of the organizations and the people there were non-people of color. Power players were in this room. Power players were in this room. And I had to tell them, like, y'all that living room that y'all talking about, but nobody else has access to this living room. So if nobody else has access to the living room, how do we make a difference and move forward when it's still, you need this invite that you may or may not be able to get? So that's my piece on that.
Yeah, Santua said a lot, and it's funny because Dave got that idea from Steve, and we call it do what we do best and partner on all the rest. Like, there's certain things we don't touch because that's just not what we do. So it's like Northland is a key partner of ours in our apprenticeship work. So all of our advanced manufacturing young people, we partner with Northland. Why would we try to recreate or steer dollars away from something that actually works? But what will happen if nothing changes? There is no thriving community without a thriving middle class. And we are going to see any gains that were made in Buffalo, we're going to lose. That's how I feel. Asante, you went to City Honor, so I'm sure you know this as well. If you are a Black kid who makes it to City Honors, you're supposed to leave. You're supposed to take that City Honors education, take those networks and all that social currency, you're supposed to go to an HBCU or an Ivy League and never come back. We will continue to lose our best and our brightest young people of color if we cannot figure out a way as a community to ensure that they can thrive here, not just live here, not just get by, but they want to thrive here. And until we solve that, we'll continue to see the drain in our community. We have so many colleges in this community. There's no reason why we should be hurting for talent. No reason.
Yeah, I think what I would add is, I mean, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. That's like a quote that people actually use. But looking at the graduation rate for Buffalo Public School is 74%. Of that 74%, what percentage of those students know exactly what they are going to do after they graduate? I think that is the biggest question, right? How many of our students go through the required training and everything else to get the diploma, which government law says they should get, and then come out not knowing what they're going to do with it, not knowing what jobs they have access to, not knowing where they can take that piece of paper and build a life, right? And we wonder why we see so many young people falling to so many traps. I think if nothing changes, it'll be evidenced by what we see happening every day. But I think a larger question to ponder is, we know that a technological gap exists. If we don't close that gap in an ever increasingly technological society, then what happens? right? As jobs become more dependent on technology and that technology gap persists, what happens when we have a group of people who do not have the skills to use the technology to become employed, especially when that technology is taking out the types of jobs that don't require a lot of education. There will be a large number of people that we will have to deal with in a community who do not have any access to a future that is viable.
Thank you for sharing that as well. And so let's shift this a bit, right? Because this is the Igniting Hope conference, and I think one of the things that we often talk about is joy as an act of resistance, and really centering what the success of our future looks like by the work that we're currently doing now, and that we need to continue to do. And so this last question I'm going to pose to you all, and then I'm also going to open it up to folks who are on this call. And the last thing we're going to do, we keep talking about Buffalo being this big, comfortable living room. I don't know if comfortable is the right way to describe it, but at least a big living room where the network is so important, because if you know know one person, at least 5 or 6 people. And so we want to make sure that we're capturing folks who are on this call with their resources as well, in terms of where they might be able to contribute. So the last question that we'll pose to you all is, when you think about partnerships or community driven solutions, which ones are you most hopeful about when it comes to creating a healthier, more economically secure Buffalo? And that can be, things that you're currently doing that might be a success story that you want to highlight, something that's coming that might be on the horizon, or things that are currently working within your organization as well.
So I can go first. I haven't gone first.
Okay.
So at UB, one of the things that we have working right now is a virtual tutor mentoring program, Brainy Bulls. It's accessible to 5th through 12th grade students across Western New York. Essentially, we pair students in the community with a UB tutor mentor, which is a graduate or undergraduate student from UB. They are trained, fingerprinted, scanned, vetted. They receive culturally responsive professional development, and we continue to provide supports to our tutor mentors throughout the year. Students who continually show up get paired with one tutor mentor for the duration of the program. We're yielding some very positive results. We want to see an uptick in terms of usage from the community. I think last year we employed 84 total UB students who were available for 4 hours a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every evening virtually. I think there's also something to be excited about. I talked about the technological gap. Let me see, I pulled it up because I messed the name up a lot. So UB was awarded a $10 million grant in using AI. In this one particular program, they created the Center for Early Literacy and Responsible AI, and is creating AI systems to help support literacy for kindergarten through 2nd grade students. Our partners are Buffalo Public Schools, Erie One BOCES, working with teachers. And this is not a system to replace teachers, but is a tool and a resource to support teachers to help students learn. I am certainly not one of the faculty who are working on the project, but what I know about the project is it allows students to interface with AI and share language, and AI uses their language, uses words for them to help increase literacy skills. So I think that's something that's extremely important on the horizon. And I think there's 5 other colleges that are working on this program, and it's right here in Buffalo North, New York, in Buffalo Public Schools, in Erie One BOCES schools, in urban, suburban, and rural populations. So if we can take advantage of that, spread the word, connect, and collaborate, there's certainly some opportunities to help support students' growth and development, and especially literacy.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Will. Asantua, you want to go next?
Sure. I don't know. I'm excited about a couple of different things. I'm excited about everything Northland. I'm slightly biased on that, just with the partnerships and the things that we have going on and different partners that we work with. Um, I'll say I'm excited about when I hear community partnerships that are things that are coming up around 2 specific areas. One is anything around entrepreneurship, which is really, I'm I'm kind of honing in on that a little bit more right now with entrepreneurship, even as how Northland we can engage more in entrepreneurship. Because I think that's important, right? To, yes, be able to go ahead and work, but to be able to work for yourself and open that lane, especially for minority people and people of Black and Brown. To be able to see what that is, that entrepreneurship, to be able to work for themselves, to be able to own themselves. So I'm anything in that lane right now, I really have my eye out and looking at more of that. And two, anything around transportation keeps me excited. And so I want to say, I know there's a lot of work being done with Move and NFTA and WS, and there's a couple of partnerships that I sit on in terms of that. And transportation is one of those huge barriers when it comes to workforce development and employment. And so I'm excited about anything that I see that's actually moving the needle on that. And again, that requires employers and other organizations to work together to go ahead and make that happen. But I think once we can really navigate this transportation issue, that opens up a lot more opportunities and possibilities, and that always makes me excited.
Awesome. Stephanie, you want to go next?
Sure. So everything that, Asante and Will said, a few things that I'm excited about. I think leadership that's bold and they're not afraid to push back on the status quo and with large employers. So I think Asante mentioned the finisher DeBurr training that we're a partner of. I was in the rooms when we were negotiating with the employers, and they initially didn't want to pay a stipend. Sorry. We had to fight for that. Like, no, we cannot have people go through a training who are already unemployed or underemployed and not pay them. Like, these are basics that are best practices in workforce development. And to have someone like Stephen Tucker, who I was a hothead during the meetings. I'll just go ahead and say that it took, I was sitting next to him like, now say this. So he was the one, and they respected him in that leadership role, but he spoke up and held them accountable for that. So that's really important. Also with the work that we're doing at Say Yes, where we are recruiting young people into modern youth apprenticeships where they're paid from the get-go with these employers, and employers are committing to salaries that are at least $45,000 a year or more full-time after they complete. Our most recent cohort, we just started them Monday. They're all young people of color. So they're working with like really leading organizations and companies locally who are committed to not just hiring them, but working with us to really look at what are youth-friendly policies rooted in racial equity to support young talent. So they're doing things that they haven't done before and creating these part-time opportunities that lead to a full-time role where they're going to train and mentor them the whole way through. So if that's something that we could grow with our partners, we're really excited for what that could do for our region. We have young people which Asante can attest to, who are at Moog making a lot of money full time, no debt. It's amazing, those young men who finish in our first cohort. So those are things that I'm really excited about right now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And so I want to open this up in terms of everyone who's in the room now. I know we've talked about a lot of challenges, a lot of barriers, but then also, potential solutions and hope for the future through community partnerships and collaborations. And so we want to be able to take away folks' connection points to how they might see this work. So when you think about it from yourself, right, what are things that you might be able to do or contribute? What can you do within the organizations that you're affiliated with? And then if you think about general partnerships, what that might look like for you as well. So we'll open it up. If you want to unmute yourself, you can do that. If you feel more comfortable putting it in the chat, go ahead and we'll make sure that we capture that as well. We have folks who are taking notes on the Clementine Gold Group team. So anybody feel free to unmute. I know Natalia on our team is putting in the question in the chat. Yep, there it goes.
So I'm really struck from the discussion of all the panelists, like the importance of linking education with with employers. In other words, there's a huge disconnect. And really, so thinking about the question of who needs to be in the room, I think in terms of trying to figure out how we aim towards those solutions is to be thinking about that. How do we connect employers? Who are the employers? How do we do that? Are there, a limited number who have a network? Is there a network of them? Do they meet together? Do they have common goals in terms of improving their workforce? I guess to me, to try and come to some of the solutions that were outlined here, which are some really nice solutions, it's getting the buy-in of employers, basically. So it's kind of like we got to start thinking about and talking about that in our heading up to Igniting Hope.
And I think that's a good point. If I can just add on to that, I think it's speaking their language, right? And so for employers, these are your future employees. And so the bottom line, you're a for-profit organization looking to go ahead and make money. And that requires you to look at, like, a lot of times, look at, here's your aging workforce. Like, this is your upcoming workforce, and speaking what those dollars look like, and you being active in this right now is ensuring your pipeline that you're going to need to go ahead and continue business. Because the reality is within, and I have this conversation a lot with employers, especially employers that are not and have not diversified their hiring process, that have not introduced more women, that have not introduced other populations or immigrants or refugees. There is no way to grow in the way that you would need to grow to sustain without hiring these populations. And so, in order to continue to make profits and to continue to grow and to continue to sustain for those employers, they have to be able to embrace those populations, because that is your workforce.
I was going to mention that there is an organization, and I have interacted with them like for the last 25 years. Still exactly don't know what they do, but they get funded hugely. It's the Workforce Development Consortium. They have the Buffalo Employment and Training Center. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot, but in a previous iteration, I tried to get them to buy into more workforce literacy initiatives, and I found them extremely. I believe that they are a link between employers and the actual work and training. I could be wrong, but I do know that our tax dollars are paying for this enormous system that do you guys know this Workforce Development Consortium? Because I don't know what they do, and they should be doing what you guys are suggesting.
They're like an intermedium right now. They changed their name. They're actually one of the partners that sit in that coalition too. And they really do offer a lot of services. Some of them being like paying the employees that employers take on. I would probably circle back over to them right now for just an understanding of some of the programs and things that they offer, because they do offer a lot where they're actually paying out the funding, paying stipends, paying for a lot within that area of workforce development.
I know it's just unfortunate that they're not, people don't know that they exist sometimes, and they're not, you could access many incentives from them, as you said.
Including wraparound services, transportation, like they do have a lot of services that they offer. Dr. Murphy, yep, that the link is in the chat. Somebody put it in, workforcebuffalo.org. That's their new name.
If I could add or uplift some of the things that were said in today's meeting, which thank you to our panelists. This has been really, really insightful. We had a smaller workforce development project that was through AmeriCorps, and I'm sure everyone said something about wraparound services, but that was so key in creating success or fostering success within the members of our program, many of which needed support around housing, around childcare, around transportation. through things that weren't necessarily anyone's particular fault, right? Like we try to assign blame and responsibility for certain things that are just like a byproduct of environment. And we followed up with our members for a year, and it was amazing to see how a little bit of support before they got to a position really led to success once in a position, right? Passing probationary periods, being able to save up for a car or a house or multiple houses, right? And just how impactful having someone in your corner, not just care about your success within the program in terms of like hitting your metrics, hitting your education, but also asking like how things are at home, right? Like traditional employers don't do that. Having something that's holistic and rooted in the social determinants of health and understanding those connections, I think really paves the way for long-term successful job placement rates. And I'm not saying this to anyone in particular, to any funders, that like trying to fund the wraparound services is just as important as trying to fund the training program itself.
Thanks for sharing that, Sam. Anyone else want to add? Maria, I see your comment in the chat, and it's getting a lot of reactions. Wondering if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Kwa. Well, I'm just talking about Buffalo being a hub for migrants and refugee population here in the U.S. We see it all the time when we get to engage with the population, that there's a lot of talent out there that is already prepared to enter their workforce and does just not have those requirements, those licenses, those qualifications that employers are requesting as mandatory to get those jobs. And if we can identify and pair them up with organizations or advocates that can help them navigate to get them there, that would be, in my opinion, a great pathway to get those employments. Those employees, like those people employed in these organizations that are requiring them.
Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else want to contribute to that question? What are things you might be able to do on your own, the orgs that you're currently affiliated with, or broader community partnerships? Anything coming up for folks?
I'll just make a note. I am such a proud Say Yes alum, and I just want to shout out the opportunities there are within Buffalo to give back to Say Yes, even if you are not an alum. They have a mentorship program that you can lend your skill set to, and just so many different ways to support, whether that's monetary, whether that's time-based. And so great opportunity within the Buffalo area to contribute your resources if you have them.
Awesome. Thanks, Talia. Just giving a little bit more space. I know I always try to give space just in case something comes up for folks. I think Wafa, I see your IIB has a pathway program for new Americans, which can help getting accreditation and equivalency, but it's small and not too many people know about it. And I think these are the types of resources that would be helpful. If you have any specific organizations that come to mind, or if you want to list your own, go ahead and drop that in the chat at this point so we can capture that. And then at the conference itself, the plan is to think through this from a strategic visioning standpoint. So how are we going to take all this learning and conversation and actually format this into next steps and recommendations for how to move forward? So this has been incredibly insightful. I want to thank our panelists for taking the time and spending the time with us tonight. I'm going to kick it back over to Sam, if you want to talk about the next session, and then Pastor Nicholas, if you want to just close us out.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Today was our first ever in the history of Igniting Hope pre-conference virtual session. We've never done anything like this. And to Pastor's earlier point in his introduction of like why this is important, we are really trying to hold our local electeds responsible for making some of these things happen that we've discussed today through the creation of this health equity plan, and also informing any other potential decision makers that are not within the public sector on opportunities to, again, help us implement solutions that are community generated. If kind of way back in the chat, I added that our next pre-conference virtual event will be Tuesday, August 19th at 5:30 via Zoom. We'll be discussing access to primary care and healthy foods. If you're like, wow, there's kind of a lot going on, there's also a flyer that has all of the dates for pre-conference virtual events and conference events. As a reminder, our conference weekend is September 19th. That's a Friday. That's Community Day at MLK Park. And the conference itself, Igniting Hope, will be September 20th, which is a Saturday at the Jacobs School of Medicine. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Shay or anyone on the Clementine team. If you were here today, it means most likely you received the calendar invites and the Zoom registrations for the other pre-conference virtual events and calendar invites for other events. But again, if something kind of got lost in the inbox, just reach out to me and I will get you connected. I don't think I have anything else. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to Akua, and I'll pass it over to Pastor George.
Yeah, thanks, Akua and Samantha and Will and Asantawa and Stephanie. Thank you so much. I mean, I've learned and grown tonight, and um, help us put this plan together. Uh, there's so much we can do. We just need to get it written down, and commit to executing it. We have the ability to access to get the right people in the room, and we have their ears. So let's give them something and hold them accountable, both public and private. There's a lot of changes happening um, locally and nationally, some good, some not so good. But it's really up to us about what we're going to do. So I'm just filled with gratitude tonight. Um, Work with us. We'll work with you, and hopefully I'm sure we'll see you on the 20th, on the 19th and the 20th. 19th is going to be some fun. And then 20th, we're going to really roll up our sleeves and get to work. We have the 2 other sessions coming up. So thank you so much. And any information that you have in terms of, again, solutions and the people, get that to Akua, get that to Sam. We'll include that in our process. And so we're not going to leave anything out as best we can. So I appreciate you all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.